Hey guys, this is Denise with Family K-9 Training here in Orlando, Florida. I got on live and I deleted it. Again, anyway, if you don't see the red live button up on the top, that means you're watching the replay. We are no longer live. You can throw down your dog questions, dog related questions down in the comments. We'll answer them for you. On Thursdays, we do our English version. We flip flop Facebook pages between Katie. She has her dog training business, Begging for Balance, up in New York, and my page, which is Family Canine Training. So every Thursday, you can catch us live in English. We tend to let me bring her on and try not to cancel. Typical me. Here, Shimon. I deleted it. Instead of bringing you on, I hit finish, and it
It
was
said broadcast interrupted. I was like, what's going on? This is weird.
my introduction was on point, and
Oh,
then
man.
it was
Okay, well,
actually
go
on
ahead.
point.
Continue
So,
with the introduction if you need to.
doo, doo. So every Thursday in English, we don't can't get to them on Thursday. We'll put them up on Friday. And I think I did mention throw your questions down in the comments if during our live, and if you don't see the live red button up on the top, you're watching the replay. You can fast forward, which is nice. We've got 5 questions. I try to write them down so you kind of know maybe in which section we ask. We ask them. That may help you if you're in a rush. But listen to the live. They're usually good. um, the topics are listed on there. They're 5. And then, so that's Katie, everybody. And the first one is, what is force-free dog training? It goes in together with like, what are we? What's balanced? What is that? So if you've never heard of us or if you've never seen us before, we train family pet dogs. That's uh, what our careers are, what our jobs are. And Katie does the same thing. And it's very similar. And we both do board and train, where the dogs come hang out and stay with us, and we fully submerge them in a whole what we call rehabilitation lifestyle change, and it works really well because of the way that we do it. Not to say that other forms don't, but that's the way that her and I do it to get our results that we do. So, Katie, what is force free? What are we? What are we considered? And what is balance? Like your name and your do you have the word balance in your business name, right? Begging for
Yeah,
balance.
yeah.
So what does that mean to you?
Well, you want me to answer that or the force free? What is force
Yeah,
free?
either one. It kind of all blend together, but yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of controversy whether even is anything that could be called force free because, like, as soon as you start putting a leash on a dog or confining a dog to an area, it's basically you're making the dog interact with you and kind of takes away from what they're trying to be. But
I agree.
basically, what force free means is that they want to use rewards only. Like they want to positively reinforce dogs' behavior and no punishment whatsoever. Like they don't want to correct anything. They just want to try to reward what they like, and
Yeah.
a lot of times try to ignore things that behaviors that they don't want, and try to like teach a different behavior and continue to reinforce that in hopes that the dog will stop doing the unwanted behavior. So they're not correcting at all. It's kind of limited. It makes things very limited because as soon as a dog, puppies, it's kind of easy to do that with. And then as soon as they start getting older, they start more kind of having a mind of their own a little bit, and would rather not always, the reward is not always as appealing to them as whatever else the behavior that they want to do. So maybe it's like
Yeah.
jumping on your counter or jumping on you or running away from you. And those are times when we, like being balance trainers, we would want to correct a dog or punish a certain behavior that we want to stop. So I don't know. I mean, it's sort of like,
Yeah.
sort of a big bee's nest. But to me, we like to reward dogs. We reinforce
Absolutely.
behaviors that we like. So if we want more of something, we're going to reinforce it with food, with praise, toys. We're going to do something to get the dog to want to do the behavior. But then there
Right.
are also times that we believe that you can correct. There's nothing wrong with telling your dog no. There's nothing wrong with correcting something that we don't like. I don't have a problem with that. So
Yeah.
I definitely do,
No, neither do I.
correct dogs, and it's important. Like, I try to make sure that my clients know that ahead of time. Like, they check out my website. It says all that. They
Sorry.
they really need to know who we are as trainers. Like, if they're looking for a positive reinforcement only trainer, that's not me. Like, that's not, I do a lot of that, but that is not, I really don't believe in that. I don't believe in just like limiting it so much, because there's so much benefit to the other side of it too. To being able to correct something or punish something, it is very beneficial at times. So I don't want to limit my training style like that. So
Yep. And I mean, those dogs that usually these people that, the trainers that claim that they are horse free, or that, you know, label themselves as such, right? Um, when that using that style only, right? When using that style only, they've got dogs that works great with. If they're a certain age, if they're really easy dogs. Remember, dogs have personalities just like us. Katie and I most likely don't learn the same, right? Have different things that we like as far as like learning. The same thing with the dog. So if it worked for like a nice, easy puppy, for example, let's use the jumping on people, because I got that ass yesterday. Like, say, scratching her butt on my carpet. Ugh, come on. So it works with the easy dog, right? The dog jumps, and it works with the easy dog. They've really, done tons of repetitions, because that's what they tell owners to do. And it's not fair to owners, because they give up, they don't have the patience, they don't have the skills like a trainer who's versed in practice, right? So it works, right? Okay, the dog doesn't jump on people inside your house, right? Great. And you worked so long on it, and all these treats, and like uh, uh upset stomach with all these high value treats, because they'll tell you to use that if it doesn't work. You take the dog outside in a very high distraction, or a store, or a park, or whatever, and you let them get pet, and they will jump on everybody, and you have not been able to stop that. And what you do is you give the dog a command to try to fix it, and then reward that. So, and that usually takes the person into a very frustrated cycle, because if they manage to, I mean, it depends on what your goals are. If you just want it, mediocre. But if you actually want to stop the behavior, not have frustration, and I tell that to people, I tell it to my clients all the time. Everybody's goals is different. So if you don't want like really, really, really solid obedience and a solid like relationship, then hey, you're going to do it to a certain extent, to how you feel comfortable. And I don't judge anybody. I don't care what you use. Just train your dog, right? But if you're still struggling with the same behavior, and you got a dog that's potentially going to show worse behaviors than just jumping on people, or can actually like tip over a kid and bust their head open, you have a problem. You have a problem when you cannot stop the behavior. So that, it's not always bad just using just the good reinforcement. And everybody will gravitate towards that because of the word. The word force is kind of ugly, right? Am I making sense or no?
yeah,
The word force is ugly, and the word positive is like, yeah, I want that. Who
right.
wouldn't want
And people
anything
don't like the word
positive?
punishment either. They don't like the word
Right,
punishment.
right.
Punishment it doesn't always mean like, a
Come here.
physical, it doesn't even have to mean like a physical correction, or,
Come,
you know,
please.
the words are very, people equate it with human things. Like you equate it with something human. Like you think of when you were punished as a kid, maybe it was like with a belt or something.
It was
That's not the
great.
same thing as, punishing a dog for jumping on the counter or punishing, if they break obedience and we, correct them. It's not the same. Doesn't have to be something like that. And it can be like we can use a physical correction. We can also withhold the reward as a punishment. Like if the dog expects to be given food, let's say, for doing something, and they don't do it, then if we withhold the food, the dog is punished in a
Yep.
sense. So there are different types of punishments, and it's important not to get kind of caught up in the words. And, one other thing that happens with, if you're trying to do all positive reinforcement, what I've seen some owners who have gone to, like big box training places, a lot of times they do positive reinforcement training, and that's it, just that. What happens is the owners unknowingly are rewarding all the behaviors. They're rewarding everything. So everything their dog is doing, they think if we just give it food, then it will stop. Their timing might be a little off. And so they're inadvertently rewarding something that they want to stop, something that they don't like actually, and they're giving food at the wrong time, and then they're encouraging something like reactivity. So, it's a little complicated, and I don't know. I mean, I don't like to like bash on any particular style of training or whatever. I think it's
Well, we use
important.
it.
It's
We
very
use it.
important that owners get the style of training that they agree with. To me, that's really important. Like if you don't agree with punishing and you are totally set against it, then you need to go find a positive reinforcement only trainer. And that's okay. Like that's who you need to work with. And if you believe that your dog needs more help and you need to maybe set some boundaries and use punishment also, then a balanced trainer is more what you're looking for. So someone who uses both reinforcement and punishment.
Yep. Somebody who has various ideas on how to fix your problem, because sometimes, as you know, it can get a little complex. You need more time. You need to engage the dog more. They need more encouragement. It's just like us. Not all the, I mean, we in like I feel like sometimes like the videos, you can only video so much and show, but every dog is different, even though we're doing like the same thing. We may not do it in the same order. It may not go at the same time as, the 6-month-old puppy and the 3-year-old scaredy cat are not going to train up the same way at the same time with the same tools, with the same enthusiasm. Maybe that puppy has like super high drive and you tone her down a little bit, and the other one is super scared and you're like, cheerleader, and you use your screechiest voice, because we have so many tools, our voice, our energy, our, not just the ones that you see in front of you or the ugly collars or any of that. So, then they don't believe in the people that, because you got to remember, we use the positive, like we play, you name it, play, social, between dogs, treats, food, all kind of stuff. Like I can get, I figured out things to get a dog to eat. Like it's, you just put your thinking cap. What I'm trying to say, like with them, certain people, they only use one way and they don't agree with, you know using anything else. As for us, we will use whatever works, that is kind and humane, that we believe is kind and humane, and that's it. And I mean, that's why we post videos, or the dogs would really be they wouldn't come out and they wouldn't get trained up and people wouldn't be happy. We wouldn't be making people happy if we weren't figuring out like what is it that we need for that particular dog, for that particular attitude, for that particular personality. They're all different. So I guess we're under the umbrella of balance, but like I know you're open to using anything and you will search whatever whatever works. A little bit of everything. So it's not like you veer towards, just hardcore punishment. Like, are you gonna stand there and let a dog muzzle punch you, or obviously not? And it's not like you're going to come down on them hammering, but there's going to be a consequence for that behavior because typically those dogs have never had one, a valuable one, and they don't understand it. Once they understand it, they're like, thanks. And then with the rest of your training, with the positive side, with all the good stuff, the dog's like, oh, I like this. I love training. This is fine. I won't do that. They told me not to do that. But they got this stuff that they want me to do, and this is fun. I get included, and it's like it's a big deal for us, and it's very important for us that we establish a program. It's not just about big old correction and, we're like high and mighty. Sure, there are moments, but the big picture it's not like that at all. And that word is ugly to people. Not ugly to me. I mean, look up the definition of what that means. And of course, everybody like is going to get happy when they hear positive and treats and all that. But so
sometimes it helps. I sometimes tell people like a human analogy. Try to put it in our terms because it's hard for them to identify with the dog. But if you think about it in human terms, I say something like driving. Like you learn how to drive, you're taught how to drive. Someone helps you, like there's a book, you learn it all, like what all the signs mean and what the rules are of the road and all that.
Yep.
And then you're rewarded by being able to get to where you want to go. So you're able to go wherever you want. It really opens a door for you to be able to have that freedom of driving and all that. But then, like, you also have to have a consequence for breaking the rules of the road and doing things that are potentially, dangerous or, socially unacceptable. So, we have speeding tickets and there are varying penalties. So if you just like park on the curb, you might get a $50 ticket or something. And if you're speeding a little bit, maybe you're like 10 or 15 miles over, you're going to get a little more of a penalty. And then if you're like extremely speeding or you're running red lights or causing accidents or drinking and driving, the penalties go up. And you can even have like jail time for really breaking, some serious rules of the road. So it's kind of similar if you think about it in the way that like we train dogs. We train them fairly. We teach them all the rules. There are certain things that they absolutely should not be doing, which might have like a higher penalty. And then, like, there are little things, like, if you ask your dog to sit and it doesn't, the penalty is not going to be as high as, trying to attack another dog. So I guess I kind of look at it like that. Just explain things like that sometimes to clients. So
people they get blinded because it's a dog and they're beautiful. Of course they are. They're beautiful and they're living and they're all loving because to us they're an outlet sometimes. And it's like, dude, your dog almost killed a kid. Your dog almost bit someone. It's just like that drunk driver got in his car and almost killed someone. And you guys are gonna be like, that person only got a I don't know how many times in prison or in jail. But with the dogs, it's like, oh, poor dog. They, like, yeah, if you are, not that you're oblivious, but if you are not looking at stats, you should look at some of them. There's some dangerous dogs out there, like that I wouldn't even touch. So that's why. A little puppy is not going to get or receive the same type of direction as one of those.
Yeah.
So there's a big spectrum of that, and it's not all the same for all of them. I think
Yeah.
that's just like, the main thing. It's like you do what you feel it's appropriate. No judgment, too. No judgment. It's like, we're not here to do
Right.
that. We're here to help.
Sometimes you have to create an inhibition so the dog doesn't want to do that behavior again. And so, you know, it's going to be more of a punishment than
So
for something small.
inhibition, for people who don't know what it means, is like the dog wants to not do that because it experienced something uncomfortable, right?
Yeah.
Whatever that, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's our
So,
take
do
on
you
that one.
you wanted to discuss like what balanced training is, and we kind of,
Yeah.
explained how there are reinforcement and punishment, and there's something called operant conditioning, which is the way that we train dogs. Like, there's positive and negative, which means adding or taking away. It's not like positive meaning something good and negative meaning something bad. It's positive is like adding something in, and negative is taking something away, in order to reinforce and get more of a certain behavior. And then there is positive and negative punishments, which are to stop a behavior or discourage a behavior. So it's the same thing. Positive is like adding something, and negative is taking something away in order to try to stop an unwanted behavior. So there are 4 quadrants. It's kind of like in depth, and most of the time it's just trainers that want to know all that. Most owners don't necessarily want to know all of those things.
Yeah.
But, you know, it's, I just think we should touch on it. So that's,
It makes my head spin, really.
yeah. It's sometimes a little complex, but it's, if you break it right down, it's very simple. Like, it's very,
Taking something away would be like you don't get the food because you just messed that up, right?
yeah, that would be like negative punishment.
Negative punishment.
Yeah, taking away something to punish.
Makes it sound like math.
It is a lot. I think it is, that is sort of a lot like math in the way that it's positive and negative, and it kind of reminds you of math. So anyway, we don't have to go into all of that. It's a little confusing for owners. So
Yeah, keeping it simple is what we do. We do
yeah,
better.
right.
Better.
There's
That's better.
enough, like, just with what we teach owners, that they don't have to go into all that. They just need to know what to do and when to do it. So
It's a lot of stuff because we want them to, have a good time, have a good life, and like fix their problems and carry forth. So, but it's a lot. We give them a lot of information, that's for sure. Um, what do we not force dog to do? But Katie kind of answered that for you guys. If you technically look at it, everything is forced. Like you force, let me use the word force. You force your dog to live in a house. We domesticated these animals. We forced them. We forced them to live under the 4 walls of your house. We know we have more than 4 walls, but just saying. We forced them to do this. We forced them to do that. We forced them to learn things so we can better cohabitate with them, right? And the reason that we do that is because we love them. We want to be with animals. We love their company, and we also the bad behaviors can cause us some serious issues, like we just talked about. So things that we don't do forcefully would be like say if your dog's scared of something and it comes in for training, we're very gonna slowly coax it to do that instead of just like teaching it forcefully. There's a difference between force and the forcefully. And I know that sounds to me. I know that sounds really like, but that's how I look at it. are you training my dog forcefully or force free? Force free? No. Forcefully? No.
Yeah. Words are very, it's like complicated because there are certain times when I have to force a dog that's like nervous or whatever. If I, let's say, like flooding. So
Yes,
I have a
Dan.
dog that needs to get used to something that they maybe have never heard or seen before. And there are certain times when I will flood them, like force them to be in that environment and just sort of like work through it. But that is different than what people maybe think of when they think of the
Yeah.
word force. And so the
Yeah.
words are very, I don't know, it's all just words.
They're,
And there's
exactly.
so many meanings for the words, and a lot of times we just think of it as something either from our past or part of human nature, and they're not thinking dog training wise. So I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
complicated to try to explain it all.
I like the way you explained it, though. I mean, I think it was pretty clear. No, I think.
I hope so. Dan Trainer says, right on, use all four quadrants.
What are
So
those?
right, we just touched on them briefly. We're not diving into that too much.
No, yeah, no, that's just a joke. Don't get
Yeah.
me. She's like, what else we have? Oh yeah, the last one. Oh shoot, we're kicking butt. How do I know if my dog will have tendencies, or risks for having things like anxiety, aggression, nervousness, da 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 da.
You asking
How,
me?
how do I? No, that's our question.
Okay.
Um, Sometimes things could be breed specific, all that specific. I don't personally want to get into that because I would have to have, for me to even give you a list, I would have to have trained every single breed that exists to man. And that hasn't happened. And I'm not sure that will. But yeah, certain things tend to be breed specific. Um, you may want to take that lightly when somebody tells you, yes, a Yorkie tends to have so much anxiety. I've had so many different breeds have anxiety. But maybe we can discuss of some of the signs, like when they're young or when you first get a dog into your house, if they're an adult, you rescued or whatever. Depends on what you want to touch base. Everything's game.
Yeah.
It's just if we get into the breeds, people are gonna say, "Oh, she said that
Yeah. No,
the
I mean,
shit."
I think there is definitely a component of both nurture and nature. So I actually hate the saying where it's like it's all in how you raise them. Like
Yeah,
dogs are bad because of it's just how you raise them. I really don't believe that. I believe that there are certain breeds that are more, say,
like
predisposed, but more easily
using my tongue.
triggered for certain things. And the way that you raise them does play a role in it. But I also believe that you can raise them in the best home with, everything perfect. And some dogs have like a miswiring or their breeding is just, you know, there's something not right. And so I don't believe that it's all in how you raise them. It is both. It matters how you raise them, and the genetics of the dog also matter. So, it's important to keep both of those things in mind. And then, we've talked before on some of our lives when we've talked about puppies and like selecting puppies and that there's like the Volhard puppy aptitude test, and you tested puppies at 49 days old, and there's specific protocol for how to test them, and I tested 2 litters, no, 2 or 3 litters of puppies. One was the litter that I picked Moose out of, And you can see certain traits at that age that are like part of their adult personality. And that's why you do it on that specific day, because they have the basic blueprint of who they're going to be as an adult. If, oh, I don't want to say like if we did nothing, that's who they're, you know, sort of destined to be, unless you change it somehow. So there are certain ones that are like real nervous. They're not comfortable with the person that's testing them so much. They're like a little hesitant for going up to the person, or they don't approach the person testing at all. So they're, you know, a little more apprehensive. And then you test with like objects too. So like you open an umbrella, and puppies have never seen this object. It's pretty big. It's a little scary, but it's like, you know, a few feet away from them, and you see how the dog reacts to it. So some puppies will like look at it and not do anything. Some puppies will look at it, bark, and start charging at it, which you could see like, oh, that puppy has a little more, you know, spunk, and may be more likely to move forward towards something that they're not sure about. Some puppies might just investigate it. Some puppies might actually try to hide like behind the person to get away from it because they're afraid of it. So those are going to be the dogs that are more likely to be the nervous dogs, the ones that are like, you know, hiding from the objects or running away from the sounds or those kind of things. And it doesn't mean that those puppies are going to be nervous, fearful dogs their whole life. That's not what it actually means. What it means is if you are to get that puppy, there's a lot of work that goes along with like socializing the puppy to make sure that they're not going to be the real timid dog that, you know, is unsocialized. It just means you have to do that extra work to try to help them. So, anyway.
Yeah, that's very true. Even if it's like in one area with objects, or like for example, my puppy was all for like all the humans, but certain things, for like water, was like terrified, horrified by water, even the sound. She's all fixed. It took me a lot of work.
Right. She jumps in the pool and it's
Yep.
not a
It doesn't
problem.
mean it doesn't mean she was gonna be like that forever unless I let her practice that. Then I could have ingrained that was the way to be. So avoiding puddles, avoiding the bath, not doing it at all. Dog wants to get out, and I'm like, all right, get out because you decided it. And then next thing you know, you're like, you can even give your dog a bath, and I gotta go pay for the groomer to do it. Can even give my own dog a bath.
Well, and
So
they may totally fear that their whole life. If you're not able to help them, they're going to struggle more. So those are some signs that your dog. How do you know if your dog has tendencies for having like anxiety or aggression? And we say aggression because a lot of what's behind aggression, like most dogs who have some sort of aggressive history, whether it's biting a person or a dog or something, they have some type of aggression. It's fear based. They're actually afraid of whatever. And so they're acting out more defensively. They don't want to actually go and cause harm to something. They are just doing it because they're terrified. So, you know, if you have a nervous dog, those are things you need to not like be constantly worried about, but remember that it's your job to make sure you socialize your dog. And by that, we mean get them out and around things, teach them to tolerate situations, not necessarily make everyone handle them or put them in situations where they're overwhelmed, but try to build them up so that they will have more confidence and those won't become issues. So,
yeah, and carefully because like, we talk about it all the time. Some situations can be very permanent, and there's almost, like no going back. You can improve on it with continuous work and continuous input, continuous repetition via, like your lifestyle and things that you force the dog to do. But some of them are really permanent. Some of them are really permanent, like the fear stuff. See it all the time. So, and you can't always pinpoint the events that happened that triggered that permanent response. Like if a dog, I mean, I've seen dogs improve a lot from like their feral state, but can you fix it 100%? It all depends on, that dog, and it depends on the human who's going to care for it for the rest of its life. So,
Yep.
yeah. Yeah, I think
So
that
I know
concludes.
that was it, but you also wanted to talk about the breeds and getting like breeds that are prone to getting injured.
Oh yeah, how did I forget
Remember you
that?
said that earlier when we talked?
I forgot
So
that.
that's something we can touch on real quick.
Force training is the misuse of opposition reflex, waiting until it gets so bad that they have to call a trainer. Yeah, Dan, that can happen, but sometimes people tolerate it and it's like, oh, it's fine, it'll get better, and then it spirals out of control. Life happens, basically. It's what happens. It's understandable. All that stuff is understandable. My main thing is just keeping people safe, especially when it comes to like nervous dogs and dogs that tend to have different forms of aggression, whether it's like guarding their things, possessiveness, or their space, or because they're scared and all that. Keeping people safe is really important. Okay, so the dogs that tend to have, how did I forget that? So the dogs that tend to get injured, we can start as basic as like the dogs that are prone to bloat. So for example, like the deep-chested Dobermans and things like that. You go take them out for a run or something, and then you come feed them their food. That stomach can turn and they can get injured. That's an injury. Um, I find that some of them with those flimsy legs when they're growing up, they can get injured and pull it. I've had some random dogs pull something when they're like hopping in and out of my truck, something like that. That's not breed specific per se, but that can happen to all of them. You said something about Newfoundlands the other day.
Yeah,
Um,
I know someone who has raised a bunch of Newfoundlands and they tear their knees. So I think dogs, like on humans, it's your ACL, and on dogs, I think it's their CCL ligament that controls the knee. I'm not a vet, but basically they're big, and I did recently look it up too, that there are certain breeds, Labs, Newfoundlands, golden retrievers. Denise didn't know that probably.
yeah.
German shepherds, and I can't remember what else. Maybe like Great Danes. They get running. They run fast, and then they go to try to turn. Like if you throw a ball for a dog, or if you throw like a good way to really mess up a big dog like that. Oh, Rottweilers too. And I have a friend who also raised some Rottweilers, and she said like don't ever throw anything or have them like jump up and grab something. Like jumping to get a frisbee is a really good way for some of those dogs to tear their ligaments. So you got to be really careful if you have some of those dogs, like when they stop and turn. And they also say like weekend warriors, like dogs that don't do any exercise all week,
I
and
was
then
just
on
gonna.
Saturday they go out real hard and like run and turn, and they tear it because they don't have the muscle to back up those ligaments or whatever. So if your dog does it every single day, then they're more likely to have stronger ligaments, I guess, or the muscles that hold the ligaments.
Yeah, well, they're agile, a little bit more agile. They've been stretching, like kind of like what we do.
Right, right, or somebody who's in good shape, so
That's exactly what I was gonna ask you when you were
yeah.
saying that. You said it.
So that, and then earlier when you said that too, I was like, oh, what other breeds are prone to injury? And I thought about it. I've had basset hounds, and they are very prone to back injuries, like because they're so
Dachshund.
long, and their back is just like not supported well. So, and especially if they get heavy and you let them get like overweight, then it puts even more pressure on their back, and they can have like disc problems. And the same thing with the dachshunds. So because they have that long back and they go and they jump, like jumping up on furniture and stuff
Yeah.
like that, they can injure their
Yeah.
backs.
That's what
So
happened to Rambo. He passed one of my clients' dogs, passed away, and totally always had back issues. I think couple surgeries, ruptured discs,
yeah,
and he loved like jumping up on furniture, jumping up on stuff, jumping
yeah,
up for a ball.
yeah.
He
Well,
loved
and
to
that's the other thing too is like hip dysplasia, and it's not necessarily just the breed itself, but bad breeding. Like if you get certain dogs, like German Shepherds, are very highly predisposed to hip dysplasia if they're not tested. So if you're getting a German Shepherd, you really should look into the hip issues and make sure that their hips are good, and like labs and I don't know, probably Goldens too. Like certain dogs are more likely to have hip dysplasia, things like that. Bigger dogs. So something
Do you
to
know? Do you
just be
know if
aware of.
most of those dogs display, like some type of cow hawk or some type of issues with their legs when they're developing that, or not always, or just like the
I
limping or
don't know. I don't think
yeah.
so. I don't think, I think if you watch how they walk, I think there's certain things that you can look for, but I don't know exactly what I'm looking at. That's why it's important to have like either x-rays done, or I don't know how they do the testing like early on the parent dogs. So
Yeah.
so they're not passing down a specific skeletal issue. So
Yep, absolutely. Well, I think that was it. We didn't get any questions, a couple comments, and I don't see anything on here. If we happen to miss something, I at this point don't see anything. But you guys can leave it in the comments, like I said in the beginning. You can leave them in the comments if you have any questions, and hopefully you guys enjoyed the live. We try to do them every single week. We've been doing them for what, like a year and a half now? How long have we been doing?
probably a year and a half at least, I would
Yeah,
think.
it's like, podcast style. So we love it. We really enjoy it. I know you guys get the ones that come in and ask us questions and stuff get benefit from it, and that's that's what matters. So I'll see you guys next week, and we'll be on Katie's page. We flip flop back and forth. I mean, for us not to do it, somebody has to be like sick or something went down, which is usually the case. We tend to stick to our schedule as much as possible.
Yeah.
So thank you again. Another fabulous Q&A,
Thank
Miss
you.
Katie.
Thank you for having me on.
See you next week. I'll see
Okay.
you guys. He beat me to it and did the whole thing. Dang. Yeah.
All
All right.
right. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye. Share this.